Welcome to Programming for Designers. This is Trish Ladd, WIP 400 Platt College. Select statements. So we're going to start our SQL commands with the select statement. We can select data by their columns. So this is how we would write it. We would just say select, and let's say I want post ID and post title from posts, and that would give me all of the post IDs and post titles from the posts table. If I did select asterisk, that would be all of the columns from the post table. So select all from posts. That would give me all of the columns, whether I needed them or not. Not exactly the most efficient way to bring down data from your database, but sometimes if you're going to be getting almost all of the data, that's the easiest way to write it. If we want to be efficient with our queries, then we want to specifically select which items we want and need. We can select columns by table if we want to have more than one table so that we can use what's called an implicit join. We'll talk about that in a minute, where you use the select statement and say, I need the post table, posts dot post ID, comma, posts dot title, and then maybe a different table, users dot user ID, and so on and so forth. And then you would combine these two tables together. And then you would further filter the data with the where phrase, which we'll talk about again in another moment. Select fields by table and alias. And an alias, this is really cool. Let's say we have two tables that have the same name in their columns. And we want to take that column from one table and rename it so the data doesn't get confused. We can do that. And we can also use the alias for aggregate functions, and we'll talk about aggregate functions again in another moment. So the where phrase, we already talked about the where phrase earlier, but it defines a condition to select, update, or delete records. We can compare values like equals or not equals, greater than, lesser than, etc., 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 like, is null, is not null, and so on and so forth. We can find out whether or not any of those conditions apply to the data that we're looking for, and then thereby filter the data that we want. Wildcards for the like example, it says I'm looking for anything that matches the pattern between these two percent signs. The underscore works the same way as the percent signs, only it narrows the pattern even more, only allowing for one character before or after what you are looking for. Order by, we can say, hey, I want you to go get all of the posts from the post table and order by date, ascending or descending. So here's an example. We can get all of the items from the products table and order them by price ascending. So that would go from smallest to largest. We can group items together. We can select count to find out how many items are in a group. We can sum numbers. So let's say that we have a bunch of orders and all of those orders, we want to know how much a person spent with us over a given month. We can do that and know who our best customers are. We can average a number. We can find out the largest number. We can find out the smallest number. Lots of cool little functions with aggregate functions. So here's an example. We can select the type and count from products, group by type. So the two types are software and hardware. There are 3 items that are software and 2 items that are hardware. That's the value that we'll get back. Select type average price from products, so it will find all the software products and average their price. It'll find all the hardware products and average their price, and that's the value that we'll get back from the second command. Joins allow us to take data from multiple tables and put them together. We won't be going over left joins or right joins, inner joins or outer joins. We will primarily be focusing on implicit joins, where we can just basically pick and choose the pieces of data that we need from each table. but it is good to know that the implicit join will only get you so far. It's enough for this class, however, and it gives you a good introductory lesson for how data works together. So here's our implicit join. We have two tables. We have a users table and we have a comments table. And we want to basically connect the two tables together. We are selecting the content of the comment, that would be under the body. We are selecting the user's name, so name into the users table, the location of that user from these two tables, from comments and users, and then we use the where phrase to match where those two tables line up. So back to our statement, where comments.userid equals, so is the same as user's user ID. And this is where we can match up user ID 2 in the comments table to user ID 2 in the user table. So we know that the person who made the comment 67 is Eric, and he said first. And we also want to ensure that we only want to grab the items from article ID 12. Here are the rows of data that we will get. We will get, first, Eric from San Diego said it. Then stuff again from Jose in Los Angeles. Those will be our rows of data. And I know this because those two items, if I look at the comments table, are under article ID 12, and user ID 2 corresponds to the users table, user ID 2, and user ID 3 corresponds to the users table, user ID 3, Eric and Jose respectively. So the result properties of num rows gives us the number of rows of data. So if I had done result num rows on the previous query, I would have gotten the value of 2. This will let me know whether or not I actually have any rows of data which to output. So in summary, select statements only read data. We can pull data from one or more tables at a time. We can filter data with the where phrase. And in fact, when we join tables together, we will need to. We have control over the order. We can do it by ascending or descending on any column that we wish. We can limit how many items that we want. We can total, average, or some other aggregate of value. And numRows is a property of the result and tells us how many rows of data we have retrieved from the database. As always, I hope that this lecture has been informative and helpful, and I wish you happy coding.